Hi, everybody. My name is Neil Thompson. I am the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. The first offering of the platform is an online public speaking course called Teach the Geek to Speak. To learn more about it, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that is teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Saul Rosenbaum. He's an engineer who cares deeply about public speaking, and for engineers in particular. According to him, networking, personal development, and soft skills in general are key to getting ahead as an engineer. Technical skills just won't cut it. So I'm really interested to hear from him about his winding career path, his perspective on public speaking, and his three keys that he told me about earlier. So welcome to Teach the Geek interview, Saul.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So where exactly did your interest in engineering come from?
Well, I have a lot of relatives that are in engineering. My father's in engineering, my great uncle, several of my cousins. So I think there's really a sort of family love for engineering. And I think that specifically when I got into mechanical engineering, it was really sort of that hands-on aspect that I really enjoyed as well.
Yeah, I hear you. Unlike yourself, I didn't have anybody in at least my immediate family. I think I had an uncle who was an engineer, but I didn't find that out until much later. But no one really in my family was an engineer. It was actually my father, who wasn't an engineer, told me that I should study engineering because he thought I was good at science and math. I had no clue what I wanted to do after high school, so I just basically did what he said. Luckily, it worked out. But
Right.
yeah. So I mentioned in the intro that you're an engineer, obviously, but you're very passionate about public speaking. Why is that?
Well, I'll tell you, I've had a very successful career in engineering. I'm very happy where I am. But I look around and I see a lot of very smart engineers, very capable engineers who really just have trouble conveying their ideas. And, they're sort of stuck because they have these ideas, they have some, paths that we should be taking, but then it doesn't get implemented because they just don't know how to convey that to others in a proper manner.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I mean, basically, you're describing me a few years ago. I used to, I moved out here so I live in San Diego, and I moved out here for a job, and I thought the job was just going to be product development. I had no clue there was going to be any kind of public speaking involved. But shortly after taking the job, I found out that I was going to be a project lead, and that entailed having to give presentations on project status in front of management every month. And man, those first few meetings that I did in front of the management they were terrible. I didn't know it was possible to sweat that profusely through a shirt, but man, I proved it plausible because I was just up there just wetting the bed. I was doing so poorly, and I knew that because I had to give these presentations every month, I didn't want to continue to be bad at it. And you're right. We have all these ideas, but it's difficult sometimes for us to convey that to an audience, especially a non-technical audience.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, it's interesting. A lot of people, when you say public speaking, they have in their mind, oh, yeah, you know what? I'm not Tony Robbins. I'm not going to go speak in front of 1,000 people. But the simple fact is, if you're getting up in front of, as you were, just a project management team, or let's say you have 3 or 4 investors that are coming in to look at your company or look at your project, you need to be able to talk to them, on a high level, but really also, as you mentioned, to their level so that they'll understand what you're talking about. And you bring up a good point about how you failed, and obviously you've come very far from there. Last night I was actually at my Toastmasters meeting, and I've been going for quite a while, but it was actually the first time that I was a Toastmaster. And I shared with them something that worked for me back in the day. It was really a mindset change that, what's the worst that could happen? You got up there in front of your project management team and you failed. But you know what? They're not going to fire you because you had a poor performance. They really want to see that you're developing and you're getting better. And that's how you responded, by getting better. So really, what's the worst that can happen? You get some feedback and you move on from there. It's not so bad.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's funny when I was wetting the bed up there those first few times, I wasn't even thinking that. I actually did think I was going to get fired. That's why I actually got better at it. but
right. Well, I think that
please go ahead.
The truth is, a lot of times the first experience people have with public speaking is actually in the interview process. Because if you have, you're really shy, you're really introverted, you're afraid to talk to somebody, you're going to have some trouble at that interview. So it actually can hurt you from even getting the job. But I think once you get the job, as long as you're showing improvement in this area, then they're not going to fire you because of that specifically. But it can definitely hinder you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I also agree with you when people think public speaking, yeah, you're right. They are thinking about Tony Robbins, Les Brown, those type of, I guess, motivational speakers. But man, I mean, that's not me, and that will never be me. When it comes to public speaking, you have to find your own style in any case anyway.
Right. Well, you know what? It's funny that you say that it's not you, but honestly, you really never know. Because I used to go to conferences, I'd listen to all the speakers, and I never thought, hey, I'll be that guy in the front of the room. But over the past several years, I've gone to a whole bunch of Association of Energy Engineering conferences, and I've spoken at pretty much all of them. And it's something that I never thought I would do back in the day, but you start to feel more comfortable as time goes on, and it's really become something that I've enjoyed very much.
Oh yeah, I mean, I should probably correct myself. When I say that's not me, I mean I'm not Tony Robbins, I'm not Les Brown, I'm Neil Thompson. But yeah, you're right. Talking in front of these people is yeah, I fully agree. Talking at conferences, talking in front of your colleagues at work, just talking in general is very important, and I agree with you there. So you mentioned that you have your regular job, but you started something called the Engineering Mentor. Would you mind telling us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. When I look back, through my 18-year career, I see a lot of people who really have helped me in various ways. And there's no doubt in my mind that I would not be where I am now were it not for their help, were it not for their support. I mean, that goes for, obviously, like I mentioned, my family has some connections with engineering, so obviously that helped me. But just in my career, I've had a lot of bosses, a lot of supervisors, a lot of coworkers even, who have really helped me with lots of stuff. And it was only when I started talking to some younger engineers, over the years, and they were like, yeah, I really don't have anybody to turn to. And I felt, hey, you know what? This is sort of my way of paying it forward. I started writing some articles. I started talking to some of these engineers, just really to help pass along some of the wisdom that was given to me. Because in the end of the day, I can say thank you to those mentors. I can go back to them and say, hey, you know what? I'm where I am because of you. But you can't really repay them. So I felt passing it on to the next generation is really the best way to thank them for what they did for me.
Yeah, that's commendable of you, and I could definitely have benefited from someone like you when I first started out. I didn't really have any kind of I didn't have a mentor at all. It was basically trial and error. Especially when I mentioned the public speaking, it would have been nice to have a mentor to bounce ideas off of on how I could get better. And you mentioned Toastmasters earlier, and I was a member of Toastmasters for a number of years. I highly recommend it as a forum to practice your public speaking. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell everybody to, first of all, take a public speaking class as an undergrad. My first, public speaking experience was actually a class that I took as a non-technical elective. And I'll be honest with you, I took it because I heard it was an easy A. And when you have all your engineering classes, you're looking for an easy A to help, keep that GPA up. Mm-hmm. And I took that class. I was like, oh, you know what? This is actually pretty useful. So I actually recommend that people take a class like that, and specifically take one that's not, on a technical basis, because this way it really helps you speak in general and also speak to non-technical audiences, which very often are the people who you need to reach out to.
No doubt. Especially when you start working as an engineer, you're not necessarily speaking to engineers all the time. You mentioned there are instances where investors are coming and you got to speak to them. When I was speaking in front of management, they weren't all technical. In fact, the majority of them weren't. So when you actually start your actual engineering career, it's important to be able to speak to those non-engineering, non-technical type people. So yeah, I fully agree with you. If you have the opportunity to take any kind of public speaking course while you're still in school, do it.
Right, absolutely. And I think that, barring that, or in addition to that, really, Toastmasters is an excellent organization. You can pretty much find a chapter in any major city. And even in bigger cities, there are multiple chapters. So you can, find one that works for you, works for your schedule. And really, most importantly, is one that you feel comfortable in, because it is a very supportive environment. It is a place where everybody wants you to succeed and wants you to reach your highest potential. But, you still will feel more comfortable among some groups that you won't feel as comfortable in other groups.
For sure. So, you had mentioned earlier when we were speaking that you have some some interesting views on public speaking when it comes to introverts and extroverts, and I'm really curious to find out what those views are.
Yeah, well, it's funny. A lot of the engineers that I speak to, I'll talk to them about networking. I'll talk to them about public speaking, and very often I get a response like, "Yeah, that's not really for me," and they're not even willing to try. And I think that people see two boxes. On one side they see extroverts, and one side they see introverts. But really, it's a big range, and most of us are somewhere. We might have extroverted tendencies, we might have introverted tendencies, but I think it's a mistake to put yourself completely in one box or another, because even the most introverted guy, once you get them talking about a topic that they like, they won't shut up. They just keep going and going. And I think that it's really a matter of being comfortable with what you're doing. And that's why like I'll tell them, when you go to a career fair or you go to some sort of networking event, I'm like, go in there for 5 minutes, meet one person, and leave. Because that's where your comfort level is. And you start there and you move on. And it's, same thing with public speaking. Start with something really small and then continue on and build from there. And really anybody can do it. It's not strictly an introverted or extroverted type of thing. And we shouldn't put ourselves in those type of boxes.
Man, I mean, I was thinking something controversial. That doesn't sound controversial at all. That sounds like it makes sense.
But, well, I'll tell you what a lot of people think is controversial is they think that, it's like, no, I'm introverted. You can't change. Like, this is who I am, and that's it. And I think that really there is a range, and it's a matter of finding your own comfort and stepping outside that box and not, pigeonholing yourself into something. That's not super controversial, but some people get upset with me for that.
Really? Yes, that's crazy. But yeah. I mean, I'm definitely an introvert. I've been an introvert my entire life, but that doesn't stop me from speaking, especially when it comes to, as you mentioned, speaking about things that I'm actually interested in. So public speaking is actually something I'm interested in. So me speaking about it is very easy. Speaking about things that I'm not interested in or don't know much about, now that's when it gets a little difficult, but I think that's the case for anybody, isn't it?
Well, to some extent, yes. But, it's interesting. I think that if you would talk to any of my friends or especially like my past teachers, they would probably tell you that I'm very extroverted and don't shut up in class. That's pretty much what my parents heard every time when they came to parent-teacher conferences. But yet there are still places that I'll go to and, it's like a networking event that I just don't feel as comfortable. And all of a sudden I get a lot quieter. Everybody has those places where they don't feel as comfortable, and that's when they start to get a little bit extroverted. And I think that, it's okay to recognize that you have these tendencies on both sides, and then, take some steps to overcome that.
Yeah, for sure. So you'd also mentioned when we spoke earlier that there were 3 keys that you think that engineers should embrace. What are they?
Well, I think as we've discussed, public speaking is part of the communication skills in general. I think it's probably the most important communication skill, but I certainly would talk about writing and just, general email etiquette. Those type of things are very powerful. Again, if you can get your ideas across clearly and strongly, then you obviously have a much better chance of having them accepted. I think networking is a huge, huge skill. You have a lot of people, they're looking for jobs. They go straight to online applications. And I understand why they do that. It's easy. Online applications are easy. You fill out 100 of them in a day. It's no big deal. But what happens is, they're looking for 1 or 2 little criteria, and boom, you didn't meet them, they'll knock you off the list. But if you have a personal connection with somebody, you can really get in and just say, hey, give me a chance, really understand who I am, and not just what this resume says I am. And so if you can, you should start networking from the day you step foot into college. Really, start meeting those professors. Keep in touch with them. All of your internships. The key is to have a quality network, not just meeting lots of people and having lots of names on your LinkedIn, but really keep in touch with them and try to develop that network. I like to call them, sort of your business friends. The same way, even if you don't talk to that friend from high school for a while, but every year or 2, you touch base with him, you're able to kind of rekindle that friendship and keep it up.
Yeah.
The third key, yeah.
Please go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, you stuck.
And I'm on a roll here. What can I tell you? And the third key, I think, is really about, professional and personal development. If you go to a class to get some specific skills, that's always helpful. When it comes to reading books, my theory on that is if you look at the book and you think, hey, I can learn one or two things from this, just buy the book. Don't even think about the $5 or $10 you're going to spend on it. It's worth it. And then also, professional licensing. What I always tell people is look at the people who are sort of in the position where you want to be, and then, see what licenses kind of come up over and over. Those are the ones that you should be going for.
Well, you know what? Those are some excellent keys that I think the engineer should definitely take to heart when it comes to growing their career. It's funny you mentioned about quality versus quantity of connections or in your network. I actually was just reading earlier today that there was a woman on, I think it was Instagram, and she had started, she has about, a couple million followers. And she started this, well, she tried at least to start this brand selling products. And she needed to sell at least 36 items to continue on with the selling, and she wasn't able to do it. She couldn't get her, millions of followers to buy 36 things. So it just goes to show that, just because you have a number, millions of people following you doesn't mean you have a quality network.
Right, absolutely. And I think that it's also, you shouldn't be overly concerned with what that person does, because you could be connected to the CEO, but unless you really know him or he knows you, do you think he's going to take your call? But on the flip side, if you have somebody who's the CEO's executive assistant, but you have a connection to them, that's the person that's going to get you in the door. That's the person who can get you on their schedule. So it's important to really have connections with people who can actually help you out, work with you, or at least point you in the right direction, as opposed to just having lots of names with super high credentials, which really don't get you anywhere.
For sure. So when it comes to the public speaking that you do you have a process for developing your speeches or your presentations? And so what is it?
Well, I generally write out the speech, try to get the main points. But what I used to actually write down word for word. And what I found is that really became a stumbling block, because if you forget a specific word or you don't know what's next, then all of a sudden you just, you freeze up and you're like, oh man, what's next? So what I started to do is really have, 10 bullet points or 10, goalposts that I was aiming for. And then I would know, okay, I have to go from one post to the next post to the next post. And, you practice it several times in your head. I would actually practice it in front of a mirror and really go through it. The words might be different every time, but if you're hitting those main points, you can stay calm and can get through it much easier.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. You try to write out the entire thing, you miss a word, then you might get confused or you lose your place. But if you have bullet points and you know what point needs to happen when and the transitions from one point to another, it doesn't really matter if the words differ. The audience isn't going to know anyway. They just want to know what the message is, right?
Right. That's absolutely true. And I think that, a lot of people find it very comforting to have PowerPoint slides that at least help guide them along. I think you just have to be careful that you don't put, a full paragraph of words up there, which I've seen many speakers do. If you're repeating every word that's on the screen, then why are you even there? Just have the bullet points. That's it.
Man, if anyone is guilty of that, man, I swear is people that is engineers and scientists. Boy, I tell you, you don't even know how many conferences I've been to where that's exactly what it was. This is just like dissertation upon the damn PowerPoints, man.
Yeah. What I've also seen is some of them, in addition to that, they'll put up, a graph, but they're trying to show, hey, here's 4 years worth of data. But because they're fitting in so many data points that you just can't see any details on it. So it just looks like one big thing, a big blob. And you can't really tell what they're trying to convey anyway.
Yup. Man, it's
a problem.
It's a problem, yo. I mean, when you go to those conferences, man, you go sit down, one of them talks is like, you better not go down, you better not sit down while you're drowsy, because you're going down.
Oh yeah, that's true. It's funny though. Ever since I started to get more serious about public speaking, there are times when I'll go to, you'll have, let's say within a session, you'll have 4 speakers in a row, each are doing 20, 30 minutes. There are times where I'll sit there, and even if they lost me on a topic, or I find the topic just, wasn't what I thought it would be, I'll sort of watch them for the keys. Like, hey, how did they connect with the audience? What was it that made me, really relate to what they were saying? So you can just learn from their mannerisms as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. And honestly, since I started Teach the Geek, I tend to do that a lot now when I sit down and listen to speakers. And that's what I am curious as to what they're doing to engage the audience. I'm curious to see if I actually stay listening, and if so, what did they do to make me do that? So yeah, that's an excellent point. When it comes to you giving speeches or presentations, do you ever get nervous? And if so, how do you deal with your nerves?
I definitely get nervous, and I think that pretty much everybody gets nervous to some level. I think that, first of all, your preparation beforehand is going to be a big driving factor in that. If you feel, hey, you know what, I've done what I could, I really went through everything, and you really honestly spent the time preparing, then you're going to be fine. I think that the other part of it is that if you have the mindset that, hey, these people are here to hear, they want to hear me. They're here to learn something. They're not here just, because somebody forced them to. So they want you to succeed, and they're sort of like in your corner rooting for you. I think that really helps me personally, just sort of boost me up a little bit and go, hey, I'm somebody special in their minds. Let me give them what they want.
Yeah, I agree with you there too. And you're right. I think if you're telling yourself, or if you say that you don't get nervous before a presentation, you're lying. Everyone does. It's true. I think the reason it is, and if you're not, that means that you don't really care about what you're talking about.
Right. I'll tell you, the truth is, even in my, sort of in my Toastmasters, sometimes, you're there literally with 15 people that you see every other week. But sometimes, you have a little bit of nerves. And I think that you can really track your own progression over time, by, sort of what that level is that makes you nervous. Because there used to be a time where, I really didn't want to speak in front of people. I would have a question, let's say you're at a session. I wouldn't even want to ask a question of the presenter, because I'm like, yeah, what if it doesn't come out well? I really don't want to be that person. Now, if I have a question, I'll just, raise my hand and ask the question. So that won't make me nervous. But, speaking, yeah, I still get nervous a little bit at the beginning, but you definitely feel that you're improving over time. You sort of are able to calm yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that marks about the end of our time, Saul. Is there anything else that you'd like the people watching to know about, things that you're working on?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I think that one of the things for younger engineers is really keep your options open, keep your mind open, because, when I got my degrees in mechanical engineering, I took no classes in, energy efficiency and energy engineering as an undergrad or even in my graduate degree. But that's sort of the field that I found myself in. And I just really started to love it. And that's what I've been in for 18 years. But I've sort of weaved my way into different roles in different places. And so right now, as the director of Green and Energy Services, I find that I'm able to work on very technical energy engineering projects, but then I also deal with a lot of the marketing and the business side of things. So I think that, it's good to keep your mind open and really find your place, because there are lots of, fields out there. There's lots of little areas within the field. And if you have an interest, I'm sure there's a job out there that'll really fit it well.
For sure. So how can people contact you?
Well, when it comes to my mentoring, they can go to www.theengineeringmentor.com. And if they're interested in knowing more about, sort of my energy engineering work, they can go see my articles on my company blog. It's grs-global.com/green. Or they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on that platform as well.
Excellent. grs-global.com/green. And theengineeringmentor.com.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for speaking with me, Saul. For everyone watching, my name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. The first offering of the platform is Teach the Geek to Speak, a public speaking course. To learn more about it, please go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, please take care.